Look inside almost any Christian church today, and you will find a version of the exact same ritual: a basin, a pool, a few drops of water on a forehead, or a full submersion. Baptism is the most universally recognized initiation rite on the planet. Curious, but if you open the New Testament to find out exactly where this practice came from, you run into a strange historical blank spot. In the opening chapters of the Gospels, a man named John simply wanders out of the desert and starts dunking people in a river. The text offers no instruction manual or backstory for what he is doing. There is no explanation of the mechanics. Yet crowds of first-century Judeans immediately flock to the water and line up to participate, already familiar with the concept. These crowds clearly recognize the rite, which means the authors of the New Testament did not invent baptism. The blueprint had to come from somewhere else. To understand the ritual the apostles eventually adopted, we have to go back further in time. We have to trace the ancient pre-Christian water rites that the early church adapted for a new purpose. In first-century Judea, long before John appears, water immersion was already a daily reality. The ancient Jewish world operated on a system of ritual purity, and water was the primary tool used to maintain it. Matter of fact, this is a mikveh. It is a deep, stone-lined ritual bath designed with a flight of steps leading down into the basin. This was a mechanical process for clearing Levitical impurity, the everyday ritual contaminations pick up living in the ancient world. These baths were a fixture of the landscape. Archaeological excavations, like this one at Magdala, show that mikvahs were not restricted to the temple. They were built directly into residential neighborhoods and local synagogues, integrated into the daily flow of village life. The mikveh rules were precise. You walked into the water alone. The immersion was entirely self-administered. And because you lived in a physical world where you would inevitably become ritually impure again, the process was repeated regularly. In this era, water functioned as a maintenance tool. It was a repetitive, solitary act of physical obedience. But out in the arid wilderness near the Dead Sea, that maintenance routine began to change. A highly isolated Jewish sect known as the Essenes established a remote settlement at Qumran, far removed from the mainstream religious establishment. The Essenes expanded the mikveh tradition, explicitly linking the physical immersion of the body to a spiritual cleansing of the soul. We know from their own codified rules preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls that this immersion required rigorous instruction. The water served as a boundary marker. You washed to prove you had repented and officially joined their exclusive community. The Essenes evolved a standard hygiene law into an initiation rite that signaled a person's repentance and their allegiance to a specific group. Then John the Baptist arrives. He takes the desert sect framework into the public square, introducing 3 critical changes to the traditional ritual. His first change was location. John abandoned the stagnant, highly regulated stone basins of the towns and went straight to the muddy, wild banks of the Jordan River. He utilized living, flowing water. He also changed the operations. The immersions were no longer self-administered. John physically baptized those coming to him. And instead of a repetitive chore, John's baptism was a one-time event performed specifically for the remission of sins. After the resurrection, the earliest followers of Jesus adopted John's one-time model and scaled it rapidly. In the book of Acts, thousands are baptized on the day of Pentecost, and individuals like an Ethiopian official are immersed the very day they hear the message. What stands out in these historical accounts is the speed. The apostles did not require months of probationary disciple training or formal classes. The Greek word baptizo meant to immerse, and they did it immediately upon a person's confession of faith. Early Christian baptism functioned as an urgent, immediate physical reaction to hearing the gospel. The apostles stripped away the bureaucratic delays of the old systems. Looking across the timeline, there is a striking irony. From the earliest stone mikveh to the waters of the Jordan, the physical mechanics of a human body being submerged underwater remained nearly identical. What the apostles did was rewrite the internal meaning of that water. They changed the act from a repetitive preparation ritual into a permanent declaration of a person's core identity. Looking at this ancient baptismal font, we see a theological leap. Paul argued that going into the water symbolized burial, and coming out symbolized resurrected life. Early Christian architecture reinforced this metaphor, using a deep central basin to formalize the imagery of a grave. Stepping down into that grave was a public declaration. In the first centuries of the church, you were visibly severing your social and political ties with the Roman or Jewish world to align yourself with a subversive, heavily persecuted new community. By tracking this evolution, we see that early baptism was no quiet tradition. It functioned as a radical boundary line, marking the definitive death of an old identity and the birth of a new reality.